That's right, gavel time.
I'll put it all together and send it.
We already opened the meeting because we had a private session before, Brendan. Before our public meeting, so we've already opened the meeting and we're gonna be starting with the flag salute. Michael, would you like to lead us?
Yes.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Let's go over our announcements. Rob, do you have any?
I have two. Join Dr. Mikey Fallon on March 10th as he presents You Don't Know Me Until You Know Me, a celebration of acceptance of our differences. This is the fourth and final offering in the Edison Speaker Series for the 2019 through 2020 school year. Dr. Fallon combines his psychological training with professional acting talents to promote inclusion towards all people. Visit recent news on the district website at www.westfieldnjk12.org for information and to register. And then my second notice, the next meeting of the Parent-Teacher Council will be held on Wednesday, March 18th at 10:15 a.m. in the board room at 302 Elm Street. The PTC is the umbrella organization for all 10 of the Westfield PTOs. At these monthly meetings, the PTO presidents meet with the PTC board, Superintendent Dr. Margaret Dolan, and a Board of Education representative. All parents are welcome and encouraged to attend. Future meetings will take place on the following Wednesdays, April 22nd, May 20th, and June 10th.
Thank you. Taryn?
Yes. The Westfield High School Strive Club is hosting its annual charity concert this May. The club invites all Westfield students and residents to attend auditions on March 30th, 31st, or 31st at 3:30 p.m. in Cafeteria B at the high school. This is your chance to shine. All proceeds will go to the Strive Scholarship Fund to help students across the globe to continue their education. Auditions are on a first-come, first-served basis, but those who contact whsstriveclub@gmail.com in advance will receive priority. My daughter actually did that show. It's run by the students. It's really pretty impressive. Congratulations to World Languages teacher Kim U Yang, who attended the 66th Annual Northeast Conference on the Teaching of Foreign Languages, where she presented a workshop on the use of technology tools to supplement world language learning. The theme of this year's conference in New York on February 14th was Languages for All, envisioning language learning opportunities for every learner.
Thank you, Michael.
There's a reminder that the Rotary Club of Westfield's 54th Annual Breakfast of the Bands will be this Saturday, February 29th from 8 a.m. to 12 noon at Westfield High School. This popular event features performances by top bands from Westfield High School and Edison and Roosevelt Intermediate Schools, along with lots of great food. Tickets are $10 and available from Rotarians or at the door. All proceeds benefit the Rotary Club Scholarship, Community Grants Program, and Project Hunger. So if you're not doing anything Leap Day, you have nothing to do now.
The Westfield High School Concert Choir will perform with the Hofstra University Chamber Choir on March 18th at 7 p.m. at the First Congregational Church as part of Hofstra's 2020 Northeast American Tour. The public is invited and admission is free.
I have a few theater-related announcements. Edison Intermediate School kicks off the season of spring musicals in Westfield Public Schools on March 5th as the student cast and crew bring to life many of the whimsical characters created by Dr. Seuss. The musical performances of Seussical the Musical will be held in the Edison Auditorium at 800 Rawway Avenue beginning at 4 p.m. on March 5th and at 7 p.m. on Friday, March 6th and Saturday, March 7th. Tickets are $10 for the Friday and Saturday performances for both pre-sale and at the door. Visit eis.booktix.com to purchase tickets. Please note that tickets for the matinee or Thursday, March 5th will be on sale at the door only at $5 each for general seatings. I have my tickets. Save the Date at the Roosevelt Intermediate School Theater Department presents Matilda the Musical, based on the children's novel of the same name by Roald Dahl. The matinee performance on March 19th begins at 4 p.m. with 7 p.m. performances on Friday, March 20th and Saturday, March 21st in the Roosevelt Auditorium at 301 Clark Street. Ticket information will be available soon on the Roosevelt School website. And lastly, the Westfield High School Theater Department is proud to present Chicago, the high school edition, as its spring musical this year. More than 130 student actors, technicians, and musicians will once again combine a myriad of talents. The Westfield High School musical runs from Thursday, March 12th through Saturday, March 14th, beginning at 7:30 p.m. each evening in the Westfield High School Auditorium at 550 Dorian Road. Tickets for the public will be available for purchase soon at whstd.booktix.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Gretchen.
I have a few as well. 4 Westfield High School seniors have advanced as finalists in the 2020 National Merit Scholarship Program, having met academic and other standards to become eligible for scholarships, which will be announced in the spring. The program honors students who show exceptional academic ability and potential for success in rigorous college studies. We want to congratulate Ian Gerland, Aiden Kilborn, Connie Liu, and Julia Tompkins for this very significant recognition. We also want to congratulate Westfield High School 11th graders Eric Palia for a perfect score on the math portion of the December SAT, and Sean Hazard, who achieved top scores on the science and STEM sections of the December ACT. Kudos also to 9th grader Alexandria Sakala, who recently received the President's Volunteer Service Award, which recognizes people of all ages who have volunteered significant amounts of time to their communities. Alexandra also received the Prudential Spirit of Community Award for exemplary volunteer services. And finally, whether mapping curriculum, analyzing testing data to help inform instruction, examining issues surrounding student mental health, or joining together in social and emotional learning teams to create PSAs to foster a continued culture of kindness, there was plenty of professional learning taking place during the Staff in-Service Day on February 14th. So special thanks to the Department of Curriculum, Instruction, and Program and all who helped to organize this engaging and day-long program of sessions while all of our children slept in, I'm sure.
Thank you, Gretchen. Amy.
I have 2 as well. In honor of Jewish Disability Awareness and Inclusion Month, the JCC of Central New Jersey invites the public to a screening of Shoelaces, an engaging family dramedy about the knotty, as entangled, relationship between an aging, irascible mechanic and the exuberant special needs son he abandoned. The screening will be held on Thursday, February 27th, beginning at 7:30 p.m. at 1391 Martine Avenue in Scotch Plains, and is free and open to the public. Registration is required at www.jccnj.org. Contact Courtney Teicher at cteicher@jccnj.org or 901-889-8800, extension 227, with any questions. And the 27th Annual Awareness Expo will be held on Wednesday, March 11th at Edison Intermediate School from 7:15 to 9:45 p.m. Presented by the Westfield PTC's Special Education Committee, the Awareness Expo will provide parents and educators of special needs children with information and resources to aid in their ongoing education and growth. The event is open to the public and free of charge. A complete agenda of the evening's informative sessions, along with registration information, can be found in Community Flyers under the Family Resources tab on the district website. This is one I've gone to for many years, and it's invaluable. Great information and really great people and resources available. So I encourage you all to attend if you can.
Great, thank you. Dr. Dillon, do you have any announcements?
I do not.
I just want to remind the public that the next meeting of the Westfield Board of Education will be held on Tuesday, March 10th at 7:30 p.m. at 302 Elm Street. The complete agenda will be available on Friday, March 6th on the board section of the district website. Okay. At this time, I'd like to recognize the public for agenda items only. Agenda items only. Seeing nobody come forth to the podium, we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Dolan.
Thank you. So for this evening's superintendent's report, it's actually going to be delivered by our business administrator. It's a presentation, as of now, what we know about the budget for the next school year, 2020-2021 school year. So I'll introduce Dana Sullivan to present that.
Yes, so as you know, we've been working on the budget for a number of months. So, Marianne, yeah. So the budget calendar, we start the budget process early in November. The board had a workshop, as you recall, and you gave us some guidance on where you wanted to see the budget go for next year. Shortly after that, all the information was distributed to the schools, and then in early December, they submitted back their requests for, their budget requests. Through December and January, Dr. Dolan and I met with every principal and every department head to review their budget requests. And then tonight, of course, we are presenting the first presentation on the budget. We do not have state aid as of today. The governor's budget message was delivered today. It sounds like we're still on track for them to be implementing the state aid formula gradually as they've been doing. So you'll see in the slide coming up, that's what I've anticipated. And then you will be asked to approve the tentative budget at our next board meeting, which is March 10th, because it's due to the county by March 20th. And then you'll have a public hearing on April 28th, and that'll be the final adoption. So the goals that were set forth at the November meeting were to maintain class size within the policy guidelines, to maintain funding for recently approved classes, school resource officers, and for social emotional learning. Maintain our fund balance, so that's our fund balance that we have for emergencies at the 2% maximum level. We wanted to stay within the 2% cap plus eligible waivers. We actually do not have any waivers this year, so we're staying within, well, we're trying to stay within the 2% cap. Usually we're eligible for a health insurance waiver. This year there is no health insurance waiver. And that's because state health benefits did not increase. State health benefits is all over the place. It's, some years it increases 20%, some years it doesn't. This year they have done something different and there's no increase, so therefore no district is eligible for a waiver. And one of the things that the board wanted to consider was increasing the student activity fee due to the increased transportation costs. We have not yet done that. It doesn't really bring substantial amounts of money, and it does cause great angst with parents. So at this point, we haven't increased that fee, but that was something we did look at. So revenue side of the budget in New Jersey has to be balanced. That is actually not a law everywhere, but in New Jersey it is for school districts. Therefore, the revenues have to equal the expenditures. So looking at the revenue side of the budget, the increases that we're projecting in revenue is the 2% increase in the tax levy, which is $2 million. We did, at a previous board meeting, we increased subscription busing. We had been charging $450 a year for that busing for years with no increase. And the cost of transportation has dramatically increased over the last number of years, which you'll see in a slide coming up. So we did recommend, and the board did approve that increase. So we've anticipated that revenue in next year's budget. And we're estimating an increase in state aid of $400,000. That's roughly the incremental amount that we should get this year to start getting us towards the full formula. So our total revenue side is going up approximately $2.4 million. The problem is that the expenditures are going up more than that. So what I'm showing you here tonight is to maintain existing programs and staff and to fund contractual and mandated costs. So this doesn't include any of the additional items or staffing that people asked for in their budget requests. Salaries are going up $1.8 million. Special services is going up $1.2 million. That's excluding salaries because that's in the number above. The athletic budget is going up $173,000. Almost all of that is transportation costs. Buildings and grounds is going up $86,000, and that's mostly utilities. Our health benefits is going up a very low amount, $159,000. This is the number I got from our brokers. As you know, we are self-insured. I'm frankly a little worried about this small increase, but we do have money in an emergency reserve account if we needed to, if something drastic happened and costs went up. But at this point, that's what we have as an increase in the budget. It's less than, it's not even a 1% increase in the budget in health insurance. Transportation costs are going up $174,000, and then other areas of the budget are going down a little bit. So the total expenditures are going up $3.5 million. So what that means is that we are over cap, about $1 million. And again, these are estimated amounts. Until I get state aid, I can't come up with none of these numbers 100% until we get that state aid.
And it's anticipated, generally, we receive the state aid 2 days after the governor's budget speech.
Right.
The governor's budget speech was today at 2, so we anticipate receiving it on Thursday.
Right, by law, they have to get it to us by Thursday, but they usually don't get it to us till the end of the day on Thursday, so.
It's true.
So just back up a second, Miriam, please. So just to highlight though, 81% of our budget, and I know I say this every year, but it's important for people to understand, 81% of our budget is salaries and benefits for those staff. So when you're talking about making reductions of $1 million, it's almost impossible, it is impossible to make reductions that don't include staff. It's a very labor-intensive industry that we're in, and that's just the reality. And as I stated, this doesn't include any additional requests. We had additional requests from pretty much every school and every department. Most of them were valid requests and things that certainly would be good for our schools, but we just couldn't fund them in next year's budget. So just to kind of give you an idea of where these costs are going up, on this slide, I took out health insurance, special ed, and transportation, which you saw before was some of the large increases. The rest of the budget is going up about 2% a year, which is consistent with the cap of a 2% increase. The problem is, in the next slides, areas that are largely out of our control are increasing much more than 2% a year. So our special ed budget since 2013-14, to the last 6 years or so, has increased 26%, more than 26%. And again, largely things that are mandated, costs that are mandated per students' IEPs or state and federal regulations. Out-of-district tuition, we had been successful in keeping that down. So from 13-14 to 19-20 wasn't terrible, the increases there. We brought some students back into district in that time period, added some in-district classes, but we haven't had a great year this year going into next year. So our budget is increasing pretty significantly next year in that area.
And that's also a special education, it reflects special education students,
Correct,
right?
these are all special ed
Subset
students.
of special
Right,
education.
right.
Right.
Many of these are legal settlements that we're required to pay for.
Dana, there was some talk coming out of, I believe, Senator Sweeney's office about increasing some of this extraordinary special ed aid. Will we find those numbers out on Thursday as well, or will
No.
that be the
So
June
special ed, the extraordinary aid is a whole different ballgame.
budget?
Those applications go in, I believe it's April or something. We don't get the actual notification of when we're getting this year's aid. So we don't know how much we're getting this year until July. So
At the
it's
end
not
of
real
after
helpful.
our fiscal year is completely
Correct.
over.
So it's not real helpful in the fiscal year.
Fantastic.
But it will definitely help us, because if we get money, it doesn't help in next year's budget, but it does help us eventually. So staffing, a large part of that increase is in staff. As I said, 81% of our budget is staff. 33.9 staff increase over the last 6 years. A little more than 10 of those were teachers, 17 and a half were paraprofessionals, which is all, again, IEP driven for students with special needs. So that's where our budget's going up. Transportation, this is I don't even know what to say. Yeah, I've been saying for years, you've all heard me talk about the bus driver shortage. Well, it's a national problem, and it's getting worse, and the costs are just skyrocketing because of that. We have bus companies, first of all, there's not that many bus companies that are out there. We're required to go out to bid, we're required to award contracts to the lowest bidder. The problem that we have is that bus companies just can tell us we don't want to renew this contract. We want to go, and then we have no choice but to go out to bid. The same bus company winds up being the low bidder at double the cost.
Wow.
And there's nothing we can do. It's completely out of our control. That is the state law. It's just crazy. Our out-of-district transportation, we do most of that through Union County Ed Services Commission. We do some of it with Morris Union Jointure Commission. We do as much as we possibly can trying to share those routes, and we'll continue to do that. We're gonna continue to look at every single route that we have and any consolidation we can do. I do have some recommendations I'm gonna bring to finance next week about consolidating some routes. But, you know, again, most of this is mandated transportation. And we certainly don't wanna have kids on buses for an hour and a half.
Now, does this number include all the sports transportation also?
Yes.
And
Yes.
Transportation to kindergarten
Yes.
and any of those
This
programs?
is.
Plus special education?
Correct, everything that we do, yeah.
So
And,
looking from our low point to now, a 50% increase from 15, 16.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Are we moving that many more kids?
Mm-mm,
I didn't think so.
no,
Are we using more
No.
private transportation, which is contributing to the cost?
no. It's just the cost of the routes has gone up just because there's no bus drivers and the bus companies can do it.
Because
And
there are
they-
no alternatives.
Right, and they have no, they can't make money in other places because they don't have the drivers to do it. So the limited drivers they have, they're increasing their costs. Athletics has been a nightmare this year. It's better now. In the beginning of the year, it was a nightmare, where we were using coach buses a lot for athletic transportation, which we've never had to do other than once in a blue moon. But in order to not forfeit games, we had to use coach buses. That's gotten better. The beginning of the year was much worse. Durham does have a new person there, working there, another new person, like pretty much every year they get a new general manager. This person is great. I'm hoping he stays. He seems to be able to maybe control it a little bit because, I mean, transportation is just a problem. It's, you know, we accept drivers, it's just a problem all over the place. So we are looking at everything that we can possibly do to improve the service and to reduce the cost. But
Yeah.
there's just so much that we can't, our hands are tied.
Yeah.
Have we looked at doing anything in-house, or is it just not viable?
I did actually look at doing it in-house. The problem with that is, if it could help us with athletics, it would make sense, but it doesn't, because athletics starts before the last kids get home.
Right.
So we can't use those same buses to do, if we could, it would help.
If you could do 3 routes with it.
If you could do routes
Yeah.
during the day and then go right to athletics, it would make sense probably to buy a few buses. But without being, we can't do that. Athletics
Mhm.
starts too early, so we can't tier it in such a way that it makes sense
Right.
to do it. And that, of course, brings a whole nother host of, right,
Yeah.
right.
Mechanics. and-
But I got to the point where it was like, well, maybe we need to do that. Maybe we need to have a transportation department with, you know, whatever, but it didn't work out financially.
No.
Well, anyway,
I-
enough about transportation. Health benefits. So, as I told you, next year, health benefits, we have a very low increase. And the reason that we have been able to, you know, back in 15, 16, I guess it was, we self-insured. And since then, we've been able to save a tremendous amount of money. So the blue bar shows what our expenditures were up through 18, 19. And the white bar is what we would have budgeted if we were budgeting a 7% increase each year. So you can see that we saved substantial amounts of money each year. And next year, we would have had to budget another $1.4 million if we had an insured plan with a 7% increase. So we would have been $2.4 million over cap versus the $1 million over cap, if not for self-insurance. So this year hasn't been the best year for us there, but still better than a fully insured plan. And as always, if for some reason things should switch and a fully insured plan does make sense for us to go back to, we would certainly recommend that we make that change. I don't think that's gonna happen anytime in the near future. So we're still looking at this budget. Again, we don't have actual numbers at this point. But we're looking, right now, this is where we think we're gonna make reductions. So we think there's teachers and support staff and benefits that we're gonna have to reduce to about $340,000. We're gonna make a reduction in transportation and hope that I can achieve that reduction in transportation. Technology, we have some technology costs in the budget that we think maybe we can either defer a year or possibly buy at the end of this year with savings, again, from health insurance, if it's there. The utilities and maintenance budget, we'll make some reductions there, and we do have money, as you know, in capital reserve and maintenance reserve, that if we need the money, we'd have to tap into those reserves if we cut it out of here. And because there's nowhere else to make reductions, we're gonna make some reductions in special ed. And then, again, you know, these, and like any budget, this document changes as we, you know, we're budgeting now, it's February, what is it, February?
Yeah.
For, in some cases, expenditures that are coming next May and June, a year and a half, a year and a couple of months from now. So that's something I'm used to dealing with. We have to make changes frequently. So it's gonna be a tight budget that I'm gonna have to watch, and if things change at a certain point in the year, we may have to make some adjustments during the year. But right now, these are the areas where we think we can make reductions, and it won't be, we can probably live with these adjustments at this point, with these reductions. So, we are a very low spending district, which is part of our problem here, because when you start out low and you can only increase 2%, it's much harder to find areas where you're not being efficient. And that's the problem that we find ourselves in. So if you look at all of these districts that are similar to us in size and the makeup of them, we're the lowest of all. The state average is 15.8. So even looking at the state average, that's $2,000 more per pupil. That's a lot more in our budget. But the good news is, on the next slide, we are the second highest spending on the amount that we spend directly on instruction. So we do put the money in the right place. We spend it for the kids, as we always intend to do. But again, that does also make it harder to make reductions that don't impact students, because that is where the bulk of our money is spent. So the next steps are Thursday, we will receive state aid information from the state. We'll finalize the amount that we are over cap and start making the reductions in the budget. So on March 10th, March 6th, actually, the Finance Committee will see the budget, the details. On March 10th, we will give a detailed presentation to you guys of where we made those reductions. And then we'll ask you to approve a tentative budget that night that we will submit to the county before the March 20th deadline.
Do we see any changes or anticipate any changes in enrollment at all, going up, down?
Enrollment is fairly steady. We show a slight decrease for next year, a projected decrease, but of course, that's not definite yet either, overall. But it's been pretty steady enrollment over the last several years.
So how do we reduce staff? With, I mean, or is this a complete layoff of some people, or is this reducing their time to like a 3?
It could be.
Temporarily?
We haven't identified yet exactly what positions we're gonna be reducing. It could be layoffs for people. It would be the newest people that would be laid off, because that's the way we have to do it.
If enrollment hasn't changed, how will that impact class size?
So we've been scouring, Dana and I have been scouring personnel and how they're assigned, and sometimes when grades, because not every grade has the same number of students, right? So as grades move through elementary school, it's one thing, and how does that impact, for example, special subjects or other non-classroom teachers? And then when you get into the intermediate school, if you have a grade level in one of the intermediate schools that's larger than a team, you have some off people, well then when that number moves through and you don't need that anymore, we're making sure we're tracking that and taking away people who needed to do additional duties and now they don't. So that's part of what we're doing, is scouring the personnel list to make sure everybody is fully, maybe if they're 8/10 now, maybe they really should be 6/10 or something like that. So that's what we've been spending a lot of time on.
So what do we get waivers for? What
You get
components
waivers
of the
for
budget can exceed
Enrollment-
2%?
Enrollment increases.
Yeah.
Health insurance, and that's pretty much it. The other things like special receiving district, if you're like a receiving district, which we're not. You can do a separate proposal, that where you would put, that would not be for any mandated costs. That would go out to the voters in November as a separate, like a referendum. And then that would increase the budget. But of course, you can't put staff really in there unless it's staff that you don't need in September. You couldn't put basic teachers in there, obviously.
So, I mean, so this is the first time in a while, I feel like, Brendan, that we've been where I felt a little panicked. And that's just my word, that's not, you know.
It's more on edge than we've been in 5 or 6 years, for sure.
Right, and we're still using the same percentage of reserves, right? So we made a conscientious effort not to rely so much on reserves, to sort of
Correct.
winnow that so that, and we're still, that's held flat.
Right, so we're still using $750,000 from the reserves as revenue. We could increase that. That just.
Well, that just puts us
that
back
just
in a
puts it
hole.
back
Right.
next year, right? The problem is the following year, you'd have to sustain that.
Right.
So if you increase that to $1 million, you have to sustain that.
I mean,
Um,
it's, I'm
Well,
sorry.
I don't think anybody has to panic. I don't
Well,
think.
that was my word, I
yeah.
said that, noted, that was just my word, nobody else's.
I don't think we're looking at reductions that are gonna cause a panic. You know, where a lot of these reductions that we're looking at here are areas where because we've had a bad year this year with some placements and whatnot, we're anticipating that again next year. So it could be that those don't come true, and then we won't have an issue. And then, you know, we have things like retirements and things like that will help us off as we get into next year. So, you know, with a budget this large, we do have some flexibility so that, you know, I'm not making any reductions that I think will be a major problem as far as being able to sustain the budget. And we certainly aren't looking at reductions in staff that are gonna be
Yeah, we're not looking
drastic.
at changing
Right,
class
but I
sizes
guess,
or anything.
so,
No.
I guess mostly though, I think it's the first time that we've talked about staff
Right,
reductions
in
in
a
a while.
long time. Yeah.
And I think, you know, this is back to Mark Friedman, who's on the board with us for so long. He used to talk about there's a bucket, and the bucket can go up by 2% every year.
Mhm.
But when you have special education and healthcare and transportation costs exceeding that, then something else has to go down. And then we also have salaries, and it's not a criticism, but all of our recent agreements have exceeded the 2%. Which, because it keeps us standard, right, it keeps us in line with other districts, like districts in the area, and of course, we wanna keep our staff, cause they're critical, and so, and they deserve, you know, they deserve that, so, is there, I guess, boiling it down, Dana, is there anything, I mean, we've talked to the legislature before about it would be really nice to get a waiver for special ed costs, right? And I guess we can continue to sort of prod on that, and we are self-insuring for healthcare. I know that our negotiations team is as mindful of this sort of bucket as they can be. Is there anything else that the board, the district can be doing to sort of anticipate this point where we're starting, the water's now flowing over out of the bucket onto the floor kind of thing?
I think what you might want to consider, and not for this November, but maybe for November of =21, a separate proposal that increases the budget. So if there are things that we want to add, assuming that the 2% continues on, if there are programs or something that we want to add, maybe technology costs that we need to purchase, that we'd put those out as a separate question and get approval for them and raise our base because from that. Because
So
you're not
once
gonna be
it's
able to.
increased
you're
through
not
a
gonna-
separate proposal, that's our new base going forward.
Well,
It
there's
doesn't-
two different kind of separate proposals, one that does increase the base and one that does not. So we'd have to look at what the costs are and see what I don't know if we'd get approval if it was just, if it's staff, definitely it has to increase the base because
Right.
that's a recurring cost. If it was something like technology, that might not increase the base because the following year you may not.
Right,
need
so
to
it's
get
sort of
it.
like a bond, but not the long-term
Right,
obligation.
right.
But aren't we talking two different costs? One is spending on technology, which is just buying more things, versus we have $1 million we're trying to make up, which is a reduction of cost. So I'm not sure going to the voters for $1 million to say that we're going to buy more technology when we have this $1 million gap right now. That
No,
could potentially.
No, she was saying there's two different functions with the question. we
I was
asked.
talking, I was answering Gretchen's question about what the board could do, and that was more of a long-term answer, not a short-term answer. I don't think short-term, there's anything the board can do. Long-term, I just think that's a way to get out from because let's face it, with a 2% increase and salaries going up more than 2%, you're never gonna be able to add things to this budget.
Yeah.
Right.
I know,
Numbers
I
don't
know,
work.
in conversations with Senator Sweeney through school boards, he's trying to get the governor to put in for phasing into 100% of extraordinary special ed costs. Right now, the state covers about 60% of what they should by law cover. So that'd be everything over, I believe, $40,000 per student.
It's 55 out of district and 40 in district.
Okay.
So that would be great if we knew now that we were getting the
Right.
money. But like I
When
already,
you find out in June, it doesn't help anything.
we're
Or
already,
July, yeah.
we're already estimating $975,000 in revenue from extraordinary aid.
Mhm.
So we've had years where we got less than we expected. So I wouldn't want to increase that amount without knowing for sure, because I can't in July find out that my revenue from the year that's passed would be in a deficit
Yeah,
that
Well,
I
we're going
can't
into
do
reserve-
anything
going
about
into reserves
because
just to
it's the end
cover
of the
whole
year.
budget.
right.
Right. So if you had it, if you knew now what extraordinary aid was for next year, that would be great, but that's
Yeah.
the problem.
You know, just for public's edification, for those who are here and those that are watching, it was a trade-off about 5, 6 years ago to move the April elections to November, and the trade-off was you'd cap your budget at 2% increase, so
Mhm.
there's no separate vote on the budget by the public each and every year. But then if you want to increase beyond the 2%, you have the ability to go to the public for those costs beyond the 2%.
And there are 7 districts that are looking at moving back to April this year. Districts like Toms River that lost a lot of state aid over the last 2
Yeah.
years and are gonna continue to lose state aid. But right now, I believe there's less than 10 districts statewide that haven't moved their elections to November.
Right.
So moving back is really counter to what the state was trying to achieve.
Yeah, yeah.
But I also think, I think you bring up the point of possibly going out for a second question. You mentioned that Dr. Dolan and yourself sat down with the administrators of all the schools to talk about what they would like. So education is continuing to change. We don't want to give our students less than what we already give them. There are more things that we want to teach. So as long as our enrollment stays constant, and with the costs being, kind of stuck at the 2% increase, and plus 81% of it comes from salaries, it's very hard to say, let's bring in a new program
Right.
of whatever it happens to be. And I'm sure that each of our principals who are very dedicated all had a wonderful idea. So for us, if our enrollment's going to maintain at this number of about 6,300, for us really to put in a new program, whether it be at the elementary level or the high school level, I think the only way we'd really be able to do that would be go out to ask for this increase, 2%, to increase our base a little bit, to be able to bring something new into
Right.
to the schools. And not that we're lacking, but, there's things that are continuing to change. So I think it's a great question for us to think about, not really for this November, but for a year from November as, do we really want to do that? Because I was thinking, I'm more of a numbers person, so you really benefit if your enrollment goes down because you don't have to drop your budget from where it is. If your enrollment drops by something, all of a sudden you basically have like a windfall
Right.
that you could add something to your schools. If your enrollment doesn't decrease, you're still working within a very strict confine. So, I appreciate bringing that to the table for us to think about and, for Dr. Dolan and yourself to bring back to us some of these ideas that we may want to, in a year and a half, be able to.
We have to be mindful, though, if we're gonna consider full-day kindergarten, that's also gonna be a second question. And how many questions do we wanna keep asking the voters for?
Well, I think that's it, but we have to really sit down and I don't think that the only thing that we need here in Westfield is full-day kindergarten. I want to
Of
make
course.
sure that we're not just saying we want full-day kindergarten, but let's think about the whole education.
Oh, if we're gonna do something new, I absolutely think we should let the voters weigh in on it if we're gonna ask them to pay for it. Instead of cutting something to fund something else and then say, ooh, well, we cut art, so now can we have some more money for art, please?
Yeah.
And with all the apartment buildings still being built, is there still any thinking on impact to enrollment?
We haven't seen major changes, and the discussions we've had with them have not, I don't
Yeah.
remember the numbers of estimated enrollment, but they haven't been high.
The new area for redevelopment,
The one on
that
South
they're
Ave.
pushing on the end of South Ave does concern me, but
Yeah.
we haven't, they don't have plans yet for that, so there's nothing to talk about.
Right.
Right, and
It could be an office park they wanna put there, it's, probably not gonna be, but
Right.
It's being labeled as an area for redevelopment, so.
Yeah.
All the data that the town presents to us on these units is in other districts, other towns, that doesn't create that many additional kids. from
Every
schools.
school board in those towns,
But-
though, disagrees with the
Yeah,
numbers.
yeah,
Yeah, and we continue to watch also,
Yeah.
because it's easy to track and see in a new building or whatever, are we checking? We do that regularly to see
Yeah.
if there is a pattern.
If we have 70 apartments next to, where the dry cleaners used to be, next to the circle, if there's 30 kids that come from that over 12 grades, it's really not that big of a deal. But if we have 250 apartments down
So that-
at the Garwood line, that's seriously going to impact McKinley and Jefferson's enrollments. Or we have to look at
Right.
how we break up the district lines.
And I know we are constantly watching, and the board hears about efforts being made to control special education costs. I know both Dr. Weissman and our attorneys are constantly looking to try and keep those costs down. You know, I don't know if there's anything further that can be done there either, but that's certainly the one that it just continues to bloom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we certainly have been talking about that a lot. We've had meetings with all of our administrators and supervisors, and certainly with Dr. Weissman, trying to brainstorm what can we do differently, what can we learn from some other districts. So we are looking to see if there's some things we can do there.
And just one question, a couple slides back, we saw that we spend 61 point something % on what's classified as instruction. And how is that broken down? What falls into that?
So teachers,
Of course.
all the teachers, anybody
Building
basically
costs
that.
for those kids?
Not the building costs,
Okay.
it's anything, any cost that directly impacts kids, so child study team, all
Okay.
special ed staff, all the supplies
Mhm.
for school supplies, not building supplies, not admin.
Mhm.
So just anything basically that affects the
Yeah,
kids.
so.
Not
the-
transportation.
Not
There are a lot of knots.
Yeah, it's not
right?
transportation, not health benefits.
Right.
Not.
So not the health benefits part of the salary?
No, it's the salary, part of the
Or
salary,
just
Oh,
a salary,
yeah.
so it's not compensation.
Because it looks like a low number, but it's really not.
Yeah.
When you factor in
Oh, we
everything that
Right.
actually goes
Administrative,
into.
yeah.
Right.
No,
Teaching
it's-
a
Say not
class.
the administrator?
It's literally what impacts a kid, like
Yeah.
what touches a kid,
Yeah.
So that's defined by the state, that's not something that.
right, that we figure, no.
Yeah, no, if we could define it, it would be everything but
Well, that's why I
administration.
was trying
No,
to make sure.
and what I should have pointed out, actually, thank you for reminding me, that those numbers are actually like 2 years old, because they're audited numbers, that the state takes the audits from all the school districts and calculates those. So these are audited numbers that have been given into the state, and the data comes from the state,
Mhm.
not something I calculated.
Right, but when you say that we're like the second most efficient in terms of where our money is going, sometimes, you know, people who don't know the budget as well as you do say, oh, well, why don't you just cut, you know, there's gotta be administrators that we can get rid of. We actually are pretty thrifty in how we deploy administrators in this district as well.
Yes,
I know when, you know, the state report card has, you know, came out last spring or something like that, I actually spent some time kind of noodling around and seeing what districts like ours, you know, what the ratio is like for administrators to students, and we're
yeah, I
we're
put
lean.
that slide on next time.
Well, the state is very good at shifting the format around, so you can't compare last year's to next year's.
Right, right, but you can compare within a year to
Yeah.
other districts,
Mhm.
yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Yes.
We'll be watching.
Yes,
Yes,
thank you.
for the work.
You're welcome.
We look forward to part 2 coming shortly.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you'll send us all a note on Thursday, hopefully?
Yes.
Yeah, Friday.
When we get state aid, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, Friday, I guess.
Great. Once again, thank you. I'd like the board to approve the minutes of the board meeting held on February 4th, 2020, and the private minutes of February 4th, 2020.
Second.
Brennan, all in favor?
Aye.
I
Any opposed?
abstain, I wasn't here, I was traveling.
Personnel, I'd like the board to consider personnel items 1 through 22. Do I have a second? Kent? Any questions? No, Dr. Dolan, I think that you would like to speak about some very special teachers.
Yes, we actually have 5 retirements tonight. Everyone So let me start with Linda Frame. Linda Frame has been a secretary in the district for the last 24 years. Her first position was at Roosevelt, where she was responsible for attendance and main office tasks. She then moved to Edison in the capacity of secretary to the guidance department, and her most recent assignment has been secretary to Edison's assistant principal. Linda has particularly enjoyed her responsibilities associated with students and will miss interacting with them. Randy Perlman is also a district secretary, working in several positions over the last 16 years. She has been the executive secretary to the business administrator for the last 6 years, and Dana is still in denial. She'll be here till June 30th. But prior to that, she was a secretary at the high school with bookkeeping responsibilities and a secretary in the technology department. Randy is a valued employee in the business office and is known for her professionalism and careful attention to detail. Actually, you can thank her for the agendas. She is the one who makes sure that they are accurate each and every meeting. Now we have Vin Ho. Vin Ho is retiring in June from his position as head custodian at Wilson School after a career here of 38 years. He is extremely competent and is thorough in every aspect of his job and considers Wilson School, its students and staff, to be among his highest priorities. In fact, he calls Wilson his home away from home. It is no surprise, therefore, that he frequently goes above and beyond to ensure that Wilson is a clean and safe environment. Lori Scoturo has been a special education teacher here for 29 years. She is a leader at Lincoln School, where she teaches the youngest of the district's learners. She is conscientious, hardworking, and is respected by colleagues, students, and their families. Lori seems to remember literally all of her students from her 29 years of teaching. That's true. I've been with her when someone has walked up. Now, she knows them when they're about 4 or 5, and she knows them when they're like 25, which is a very difficult thing to do. And she frequently surprises former students by knowing his or her name when she unexpectedly sees them at a local restaurant or on the street. Billa Lucic. Billa Lucic has been a valued member of the science department for 40 years, starting his career at Edison and then moving to the high school, where his field has been earth science. He is truly focused on teaching the whole child. Bill says his main goal is to teach things that matter in real life, and that it is his privilege to utilize earth science concepts to reach that goal. Bill is also the weather expert. So, whenever there is the potential of a storm, I will get at least one email giving me not only what he predicts, but the reasons behind what he predicts. So that will truly be missed unless he wants to continue to do that in his retirement. I don't know. He might still do that, is right. He must be very disappointed with this year, I would think.
Yeah.
So we wish all of these staff members a happy and productive retirement.
How accurate were they?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I know. I depend
Second
on
career for him then.
Yeah, so-
Yeah.
You know, Dr. Dolan, or actually through Peg, since I only have Maya as my daughter, it's easy for me to comment when there's someone retiring that I know. Mr. Vin, I've known now for 4 years, as Maya's in 4th grade. He's just a tremendous person, and I volunteer a lot at the school, do a lot with cleanup, and I folded many a table with him, brought in many a chair inside and from the gym. And you know, he's always one of the first people at the school, if not the first person at the school, one of the last people to leave the school. And it's a sad day to see him retire, not to be there in the future. Maya has 1 more year, so you know, it won't be that difficult. Jack and others are great, but I did want to make sure that I noted Mr. Vin, and he's a very special guy.
I'd like to second that.
And I'll actually third that, because I was going to mention that all of our teachers are very special, and they all, you know, hit our hearts in a way, you know, how it refers to our children. But I was out walking the dog on Saturday morning, and at about 7 o'clock in the morning, Mr. Vin was coming to Wilson School to open it up for basketball on a Saturday. And he stopped me because some of my children did go to Wilson School, and he almost had a little bit of a tear in his eye, saying what a beautiful school this was, and you know how much he enjoyed being there. So one, he remembered me because my youngest is 21, so it's, you know, I give him a lot of credit for that. But yeah, so we had a nice conversation. So I second, third, and whatever that in reference to all of our staff. But okay, Dana, are we good?
Mike Beelan.
I just had one question.
okay.
Sorry. I assume we're doing a hire in the technology department. Is that a replacement or somebody new?
It is. We had a member of the department resigned.
Okay, I just wanted
It's
to verify
it's
that.
just a replacement.
Okay.
Mike Beelan.
Yes.
Ken Diamond.
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Rob Garrison.
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg.
Yes, although I abstained from agenda item 12.
Tara Porto.
Yes.
Peggy Astor.
Yes,
Amy Root.
Yes.
thank you. We move on to facilities. Michael, do you have anything?
I was traveling during the meeting, so Brendan, if you want to just
Yep,
do an update.
I took notes on behalf of Mike. We started off the facilities meeting a little over a week ago with Frank Fusaro and Sandy. Frank's representing the Boosters Association, and they have a plan to refurbish the weight room at at Kaler Stadium. They're going to be replacing the interlocking rubber floor with something that's a little softer, meets current standards for safety, as well as replacing they're called racks. It's the upright cage for free weights, and they'll be removing all of the cabled equipment like you'd see at the Y. Nautilus equipment and all that kind of stuff, and that will be going to the police department. So it stays in town. It's just not appropriate for what our athletes are using the gym for now, and it costs us a lot of money to maintain that equipment safely. So instead, we're going to something a little less high-tech that allows more athletes to get better use of the space. That's on the agenda for tonight. The Boosters Association is paying for all of that, but it is, I believe, finance item number 15 tonight.
Correct.
So we'll be approving that hopefully later. Long discussion about prevailing wage and making sure that all normal state provisions are met, and Dana has assured us that all that will take place. Moving on to our door project. The door project is, as George puts it, 98% complete. The doors are all in. There's a small issue with the integration of the electronic locks on some of the doors into our security system. That's being worked out among the vendors. A lot of finger pointing going around there. But we're going to be proceeding with the door project this summer at the elementary schools. Low tech to start so that we don't have issues going forward, and then with the ability to upgrade those locks once they get the integration issues worked out. The TV studio, the kids are using the space finally. A few punch list items that has to do with wiring equipment that we purchased after the donation from Marvel Studios. Commissioning and demonstration of the equipment was done, I believe, last week, and the control room will be done. Will be the last item done. We then talked about the town's Parks and Recs master plan. We had a long discussion about that, about the prioritizing of projects, how we felt left out of the loop. Several of us then went to the town council meeting last week and spoke about that. The plan has been pushed back to Sandy and the school principals, as well as Chris Vitale, because it impacts marching band. Waiting to see how their plan will impact our operations before we have a formal statement there.
Great, and I just want to add that I've had conversations with Mayor Brindle and Dana and Michael that we are going to begin to collaborate with the town and the rec commission for them to move forward to see whether or not using the Edison space is viable. So right now, it's kind of somewhat thrown back in their courts because they have this plan and now they have to see whether or not it's something that can happen. And the field is exactly what they thought it was and so forth. So I know that they are looking forward to working with us and moving on to next steps, and we look forward
We
to
spent a lot
having
of money
that.
years ago evaluating all of our fields and determining which ones were more viable than others.
And I think they have all that information now, so I believe that they'll be setting up a meeting in the near future to, begin to take next steps. But most of it is on their side, and they need to come back to us with more information at that point in time. So,
Yeah, you're correct. We're gonna have a meeting scheduled in the short term, just to have them understand what the issues are with the band and how we're using the field and what times we're using the field, so that they can take that into consideration when they're coming up with their plan.
Yeah, as well as the ecological issues that go along with having a stream run behind the school.
So what's the mechanism by which these conversations are taking place? Because I've heard about multiple different meetings now. Are we talking about leadership meeting with leadership? Are we talking about Jim
Facilities
Gilday
meeting.
meeting with
I think as of right now,
with Dana or
Mayor Brindle has put it in the hands of Brad Rothenberg, who is head of the Parks and Fields. I don't know what his real title is, but he's in charge of fields from the Rec Commission. So that's his job, and he is now going to meet with our facilities and Dana to discuss their next steps. So,
Yeah, Brad Rothenberg sent an email yesterday afternoon, around 5 o'clock, and requested a meeting with myself and Dana to discuss the parks plan. And, you know, we have the information that we've received from the band committee and from the athletics committee, and just the environmental information that we have available as well on what we'll be able to do or not do with the fields. And we're giving them our requirements if they want to do anything. And we're going to a listening session as well, which will then bring back the information we hear and share it with the full board.
Dana, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but I think one of the critical pieces is, you know, because you weren't here when we did those initial studies even, is that those studies are old, so the price associated with them is no longer even really a valid.
Well, and our
point of
9-year-old
comparison.
prices were lower than their projections for 2020.
I mean, the
So-
environmental issues that are reflected on those clearly still exist, but the price associated is not sort of a reliable place for them to start,
Right.
so.
Yes.
and I think they know
I mean,
that,
I think
right?
George and, you know,
Mhm.
well, I'll let y'all handle it, I'll shut up.
I think they have, I don't know whether or not they're gonna use the same planner that they use to put out the parks and recreation plan that they've done so far and put out to the public. I don't know if they're gonna hire a new person who will just specifically come look at the site
Right.
and decide, because they are looking to two fields there that go, I guess, crosswise and so forth. So there's a lot that they have to do on their end to really see if the space is viable and so forth, so.
From a board perspective, would it make sense for the town to meet with George Duthie, or would we want to keep that completely separate?
I don't know what the plan, I don't know who's,
Mm-hmm.
I think first we need to find out what they're doing. Are
Right.
they paying to hire a person
Mm-hmm.
to come up with estimates? Are they going out to bid for the project?
That was my understanding when I had the conversation, yes.
So, I mean, because it's all tax dollars, we have somebody that
No,
we work with that's already done
Well,
a
they
fair
already,
amount of legwork.
they already have George's, whatever George did back
Okay,
then.
okay.
I forwarded it to them.
So we're not duplicating
And he certainly
base
would
efforts.
talk to them,
Mhm.
for sure, but I think we need to be clear first before we bring in.
Right, and, you know, we want to protect our interest in what we're doing as well.
Right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Any other questions?
The only thing I'll add is the same thing I said at a previous meeting, is that I do believe in the idea of working closely and closer together with the municipality, because even though it's a school district property, it's still one community, and anything that we can do to be helpful and beneficial to the community at large, I certainly welcome, and I know the rest of the board feels the same way.
Great, thank you. Gretchen, do you have anything on long-range planning?
I do not, but we do have a meeting scheduled for, immediately prior to our next BOE meeting, so, that's in 2 weeks, I
March
think.
10th.
The
March
10th.
10th, yes.
Great, thank you. Brendan, policies.
Yes, 1 second here. I asked the board to approve policy item number 1.
Second.
Thank you, Ken. This is the approval for first reading of policy 2200, 2415.6, 2700, 9120, and 9400.1. And these are relatively small changes, I believe, to most of them. I'm looking for my notes here. Nothing major, just complying with current law and just making sure that our practices are reflected, as well as where we've made language changes to other policies in the past, updating them as well.
Hey, the unsafe school choice option,
Mm-hmm.
was that just for elementary schools? I was reading through it, but is that all the schools?
I'm going to defer to Dr. Nolan.
So it's all schools, but the state has a very specific definition as to what an unsafe school
Yes.
is. And actually, I looked it up because we spoke about it at the
Mhm.
Policies Committee. There has not been an unsafe school in New Jersey named since the 2008-2009 school year.
Mhm.
Before then, there were,
Yeah.
but since that year, there is not one named. So we're required to have the policy, but honestly, they don't exist at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And certainly not here
And
in our
certainly
district.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that being said, if there is an issue, and there is an ability for a student to switch schools,
Yes.
we've been open to those conversations.
Right.
Um, So, Dana?
Mike Belan,
Yes.
Ken Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Rob Garrison,
Yes.
Gretchen Olig,
Yes.
Tara Porto,
Yes.
Peggy Oster,
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes.
And I asked,
Need a second?
I got a second.
Oh, hey, no, okay.
I thought so.
Yeah, Ken.
Ken was on it.
Ken, it's always Ken if it's not
I
somebody else.
no, I
It's
didn't
not you.
hear it.
Yeah, if it's not me, it's Ken.
I'm just checking.
He didn't ask for it,
making
Ken
look.
just
Yeah,
jumped in
yeah.
with it.
Okay.
And I asked the board to approve policy item number 2. May I have a second?
Who wants it?
I-
Tara?
And thank you, Tara.
My pleasure.
So we are abolishing a policy, we're abolishing the policy called highly qualified teachers. And I wanted to stress this one. We're not abolishing the requirements to hire teachers.
You're highly qualified.
Highly qualified.
This was a policy that was mandated under No Child Left Behind, and the state has increased the hiring standards so that we can't hire a teacher that doesn't already meet these standards. So it's an unnecessary policy for us to have. We're not saying we're not hiring any highly qualified teachers anymore. It's unnecessary and we don't need to have it. So I asked the board to abolish the policy.
Okay.
Dana?
Mike Belan,
Yes.
Ken Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Rob Garrison,
Yes.
Gretchen Olig,
Yes.
Tara Porto,
Yes.
Peggy Oster,
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes.
And lastly, I asked the board to affirm the superintendent's decision, HIB incidents 20E09 and 20R04 for the reasons set forth therein.
Mike, your turn.
It'll be me. He's
Okay.
Thank
I'm
you.
not raising my hand.
And
Mike Belan,
Yes.
Ken Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Rob Garrison,
Yes.
Gretchen Olig,
Yes.
Tara Porto,
Yes.
Peggy Oster,
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes.
And that is it.
Brendan, do you want me to speak to the,
Oh, yes, the last is our snow days. Since we've been lucky so far and have had 0 snow days so far, knocking on wood, particle board, whatever this is, we have 3 snow days that we will have to put back into the calendar. If we have no snow days at all between now and the end of the year, we'll be giving back Easter Monday, which I believe is the 12th.
13.
13th. The Friday of Memorial Day, and June 2nd, the primary day. And if we have 2 snow days, we lose June, and if we have 1 snow day to give back, it will be Memorial Day weekend.
and that will go out to parents tomorrow in an announcement, but we're just
Mhm.
waiting for it to be
Yeah.
mentioned tonight.
And I just want to clarify, we don't have to give back the snow days, but it is a policy in our district to give back the snow days.
Yes.
And I'll just qualify, every time we do this, then we do have some kind of
Right, we have
weather
some-
event. And it doesn't have to be snow, it can
Right.
be something else that's
Mhm.
intriguing, so, but we have it, we have the plan, and again, we'll send it out to all parents tomorrow.
But I do think it's going to be 50 degrees again this weekend, so I think maybe we're good till Saturday,
I
Sunday.
checked through to March 10th. Through March 10th, at least it's not gonna be
We're
snow.
good. Thank you. Thank you, Brendan. Curriculum, Amy.
Yes, I would like the board to consider curriculum items 1 through 4. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kent. I circulated some notes this afternoon from our curriculum meeting, which was last Thursday. Those pertain to the, I guess, item number 2, the first reading. There's 3 high school science classes and 1 8th grade elective. It's being renamed Science Applications, but many of us know it as Science Olympiad, which is a semester-long elective. The 8th graders have choice at Edison and Roosevelt for some of their classes, and that's been interesting. So they're changing the course a little bit. It had previously been driven towards a competition, a statewide competition, where kids from the class would go and compete in science-themed topics. But the teachers have decided that in order to open it up for more kids to be able to take the class, they're changing around the competition component, and it's not going to be going to this statewide thing, which had limited how many kids we could take, and which was only held once during the year, which is hard to do when you have kids taking the class in the fall and then taking it in the spring to decide which kids would go to the competition. So interestingly, the morning of curriculum, it was in the Suburban News, thank you, Mary Ann McGann, was coverage of the competition as they're doing it now, which is actually an inter-school competition, and the kids from Edison and Roosevelt are teaming up together to work on projects and having a lot more fun, and a lot more kids are able to participate. So that's that's one of the things we're looking
So
at
are
for first
Edison and
reading.
Roosevelt competing with each other, or?
No,
it's
they're
across
combining the
district?
children, so the kids will work collaboratively to, but there'll be kids from Roosevelt and kids from Edison working together on teams at these sessions. So they just completed the one for the first half of the year, and then the next one will be June 12th
And how
for
does
the
that
second
work
semester.
with kids from different schools? Do we bus them, or is it an after-school activity where they collaborate?
I think,
It's only at the end of the
Yeah.
the course that they join for this.
right,
Right.
but I think it is a day-long thing, and I do think.
It is a day
Oh,
long.
just a day?
It's a day long, it's
Mhm.
not, it's not every day.
Yeah,
every-
no, it's not an
Yeah.
every day or an every week kind of
Gotcha.
thing, so the kids know the projects that they're working
Mhm.
on, and they know what their tasks are, and then they get to work together for the
Gotcha.
actual competition. And then the other class is Chemistry 2 AP, Earth Science, with the retiring Mr. Lucic from earlier, and Integration of Design, Engineering, and Architecture. Those are largely unchanged. Item 3 is a second reading of classes that that were on at our last meeting. Band classes for 6th and 7th grade, 8th grade, and the new course of Sustainable Design. And then, the field trips, nothing new, nothing out of the ordinary there. And the item number 4 is 3 intern candidates for next year. Any questions about any of those items? No? Nope,
Mike
okay.
Bean, Mike
Yes.
Bean, Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Rob Garrison,
Yes.
Gretchen Olig,
Yes.
Tara Porto,
Yes.
Peggy Oster,
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes. And our next meeting is March 26th.
Thank you very much, Amy. Finance, Kent.
Yes, thank you. I asked the board to consider items 1 through 16. Do I have a second? Thank you, Rob. And we got some wonderful gifts I'd like to call out. To accept a gift of $300 from the Westfield Coalition for the Arts to Roosevelt Intermediate School's band to go towards master classes for 6th through 8th grade percussion students. Next, I'd like to accept a gift of $450 from Wilson School PTO to purchase Number the Stars books for the 5th grade. Next, accept a gift of $353.26 from the Wilson School PTO to fund the purchase of 10 ukuleles and accessories. I'd like to accept gifts from the Westfield Foundation to be used as follows: $15,200 to help fund the STEM lab at the Roosevelt Intermediate School, and $4,000 to help fund an asphalt recreation area at Roosevelt Intermediate School. Next, I'd like to accept a gift of $700 from the McKinley School PTO to help fund the Capers Wranglers. Next, accept a gift of a little free library, take a book, return a book, valued at approximately $477.57 at Jefferson School from the Girl Scout Troop 40916. And last but not least, accept a gift of approximately $66,000 from the Westfield Boosters Associations towards the renovation of a fitness center located at Gary Keller Stadium. Thank you all for such generous gifts. Are there any questions on the finance items?
Mike Beelan,
Yes.
Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Rob Garrison,
Yes.
Gretchen Olig,
Yes.
Tara Porto,
Yes.
Peggy Oster,
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes.
Great, thank you, Kent. Technology, Rob.
Thank you. I will point out that we are now officially Technology and Communication Committee. It's a small but significant change nonetheless. And I wanted to just report, and I want to thank Mary Ann for giving us a presentation on the ways we communicate, which I shared with all the board members earlier today. And the focus was on the district website and stressing the changes that have been made and what we're doing to better communicate within the district, to parents, to staff, to alumni, to the community at large, and even more particularly within that community are the seniors. And really the work that Brian Walker, through Mike Beelan and others that have been on the committee and chaired the committee in the past, it's really tremendous what's going on. I know sometimes when you think about school districts, not the first thing you don't think about is the website necessarily, or you don't think about the way we communicate, but it's becoming more and more important. And we even put it in our district goal in terms of, or goals in terms of trying to figure out ways that we can keep the community at large more informed, better informed, more timely, and also not only through the website, but through social media. We have both a Facebook and a Twitter presence. And again, most of that is through Mary Ann and her efforts. Each of the schools also have varying degrees of websites, and when you go onto the district website, you can drill down into the different schools and see what's going on in particular for your schools. But try to put different things on the initial webpage when you first get onto it so that it attracts your attention, you can see what's going on, and then if you're going on there for a particular reason, make it easier to navigate. And then also stressing what some of the new improvements in terms of with the superintendent. We've always had, or at least as far as I know and recall, the superintendent synopsis at the end of each week when there's a board meeting that goes out to the public, also now through email, and it's on the Facebook page and also sent to some of the online newspapers and news outlets. And then also reaching out in terms of alumni relations and trying to get more alumni engaged and involved, not just those that live in the area or still live in Westfield, but the Westfield community at large in terms of alumni. And as I mentioned earlier, in terms of media, it's no longer just reading the weekly newspaper on a hard copy, print copy. It's now, there's different online news sources and news outlets, and the idea of trying to make sure that we're on top of and as ahead of the news as possible, and also making sure folks understand the good things that are done day in and day out by the district, by each individual schools. And it's great. I don't know how many people go on the Facebook webpage or Facebook page for the district, which also changed recently. So we'll try and figure out ways to better promote that. But it's really great seeing the pictures of the students and some of the things that they're doing, whether it's themed according to what's going on that month or just based on special events. I know Kent mentioned a couple of performances that are coming up. So it's really just a lot of credit due to both the technology staff, the superintendent, the business administrator, and others. So that's really the report for this month. We have a meeting on March 20th, the usual Friday morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. I look forward to the change in the committee, and it was a great report. And Mary Ann did a great job. I was only there via phone, but it was a great update.
Do we need to amend the bylaws?
That's coming in the next policy committee meeting. So it's not official yet.
Good catch.
It's, the mission is changing, but
Yes.
the name will change next month.
Okay.
And the bylaw needs changed anyway, because there's things in there that
Okay.
don't exist anywhere either.
High time.
There's 9 standing committees and we use about 4 of them.
Okay.
And then we have other committees that aren't listed in the bylaw, so,
It's being worked on, it was
Yeah.
discussed in policies.
yeah.
I'd like the board to consider the notes for the record.
In the notes for the record, you can see the other 20 policies that the policy committee looked at last month. We didn't just look at 4 things. We were actually quite busy with a 100-page agenda.
But these don't have any
Yeah,
changes, so they're on
right,
for notes for the
exactly.
record.
Right.
Do we have any unfinished business? No. Do we have any new business? Do we have any liaison reports?
Last week, Mike and I went to the Union County School Boards Association meeting and had a wonderful presentation from our labor attorney, Derlise, about about board hearings and what to expect and what the board's roles are in conducting the various types of hearings that we have to under the law, and how to keep ourselves out of trouble. And then there was another presentation about particularly staff member social media use and how districts can get themselves into trouble. It was a nice legal update.
Anything else?
Just another reminder from the library. If you have not already filled out the library survey, please go to the Westfield Memorial Library website and fill out the survey, especially the students. We could really use some additional responses. Thank you.
When's the deadline?
There's no official deadline, but we'd like to get another 250 responses within the next 3 weeks.
And there's a chance to win an iPad mini, right?
And yes, there's a chance to win an iPad.
There you go.
And
Worth
that's
your
for
time.
all you students, because they really do want to hear from the students and hear what their thoughts are about the library.
Yes.
And I know quite a few of them use the library, so I'm not sure they're watching the board meeting tonight, but if the parents are, they may want to remind their kids to take the survey. And as a plus, there's a possibility of winning an iPad mini. iPad mini. There we go.
It's only slightly larger than the new iPhone 11.
And nobody wants an iPod.
An iPod, I was gonna say. I have a couple of those iPods that I found.
Right.
I just have one more too. So we, the Wilson School PTO met, I think it was a week and a half ago. It's hard to keep all these meetings in line. And it was a good meeting. We really, the focus was at some of the upcoming events and also putting forward a social for early fall. We didn't do one in the spring this year, which is first time in a number of years, but there will be one in the fall. And also some special treats, if you will, and activities for the upcoming spring event that's done at the end of the school year. Can't say yet, but Mr. Malang will be happy to report on that to the parents when it's time.
Great. Any other liaison reports? Nope. Okay. At this time, I'd like to recognize the public for questions and/or comments. You have to come to the podium and state your name and address.
Come right on.
My name is Lauren Cassiano. I live at 627 Lee Drive in Westfield. My children go to Tamaqua School. We're here because we were dissatisfied this year with the class size in first grade. We're here representing the first grade parents. I know, Dr. Dolan, you're aware of the class, excuse me, the class size. You've spoken to Mr. Dulks about it. This year we had an average of 26 students per class in the first grade, which really we don't feel is, obviously it's not good educationally for our children, especially for our foundational year in first grade. And we just wanted to kind of be here to go on the record to say that, you know, we weren't happy with the class size this year, and we want to really make sure that that class size is brought down. You know, we were here and we've been listening to the budget. It's a little eye-opening, obviously. Sure. We understand that the cost for staff is your biggest cost, obviously. We heard your concern about, you know, staff reduction. I know I heard a lot of people worrying about that. We understand that. But our children, especially as first graders, deserve a much smaller class. So we just wanted to make sure going forward, obviously, the enrollment may change. There may be more children, there may be less. But we want to make sure that that class size is capped at you know, what we would expect from Westfield. You know, being here, it's a fantastic district. Most of us with school-age children are here because of the schools. So we just really want to make sure that going forward, we can make sure those class sizes are smaller, which would really mean adding a fifth section. Right now there's 4. We would need 5 to make sure those class sizes are down. And really, you know, I was in education before I stayed home with my children, and I found that having more than 22 kids really impacted the classroom. So, you know, a size that I would be comfortable with would be no more than 22. I get really uncomfortable with 23, and 26 was just like unacceptable to me. So I just want to make sure going forward that on the record, everyone's aware that that's something that's really important to the parents for first grade. And, you know, moving forward, we can keep those numbers down.
So if I could just say a few things. So first of all, you're right. Mr. Dulks and I have been talking and will continue to talk. I've been speaking with Dana Sullivan, the business administrator, about it. And we will keep a strong eye on it. It certainly is one of the dangers of neighborhood schools, right? Neighborhood schools are wonderful because that means, generally speaking, families send all of their kids to the same neighborhood school and become part of a community, right? The annoying thing about neighborhood schools is some years you have what we had this year, where we had an unusually large class enrollment in first grade in one school, Tamaqua, and in another first grade in a different school, we had an unusually low number. Now, in some districts, they would just ship some of the Tamaqua first graders over to that other school. When we get to the end of the summer and people are coming in late and our numbers are going up, we ask those families, would you consider going to another school, because we're trying to keep the numbers down? Honestly, that often doesn't work. We try, but we don't forcibly move them. So that's the danger, or not the danger, it's not a danger.
Downside.
Yeah, the downside of neighborhood schools, because every now and then, and it jumps from school to school to school. You get a grade, and the class sizes are larger. I will have to say the class sizes are not 26. If you add some students who come in for certain subjects, it may get to 26, but that is not the average size of the actual class who's there for the academic subjects. I checked the numbers today.
Yes, for during instructional time, correct.
Yeah.
You know, I know my son's class has 26 students, but I understand that some of those students leave for,
Right.
special services. I get that.
Yeah.
Um,
Right, so.
but to need the space for 26 bodies in a classroom is just chaotic. The classroom is just cramped and chaotic, and, these teachers have to balance the needs of these children. Maybe not for math, science, social studies, but their needs in general, and that makes it difficult. And now, to your point about moving families from school to school, I understand that. I wouldn't want to be one of those parents. I absolutely would not. And I understand if you have first grade classrooms in other schools in the district that maybe have 15 or 18 students, I get how you would want to, balance that out. Staff-wise, budget-wise, space-wise, it seemed like it wasn't an issue. We were told at the end of last year that if enough students enrolled, we would have a fifth section. So throughout the summer, we were kind of waiting to say, will we, won't we, will we? And it turned out we didn't. Now, in my mind, I thought, okay, yes, I'm sure that's a budget issue, but it probably was also a capacity issue. There was probably a situation where there wasn't enough classrooms. And then I came in for parent-teacher conferences, which is the first time I was able to come into the classroom because of the new security procedures and everything, which is understandable. I'm glad we did that. But however, I came in and I walk in to see my first grader's classroom, and I see there's an empty classroom right next door. And I'm thinking, why are our students crammed into these 4 classrooms when there's this empty classroom that could have been utilized? And I know one of the ways that the number of students per class was addressed was adding I think it was like a push-in teacher.
That's correct.
Yes. Which to me is great. I'm glad something was being done. But it was maddening to know that there's this empty classroom, and our fix is to have, a paraprofessional coming in. I think she's a paraprofessional.
No, she's a fully certified teacher.
She's a fully certified teacher at a full-time salary?
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Okay. Why some of that money couldn't have been allocated to just make a completely new fifth section of first grade? So it seemed like we had the capacity, we had the staff. It was hard for me to understand. So we're just here trying to understand, what the rationale was, what the rationale is for next year, and how we can fix it so we're not in the same situation that we were in August. And then September.
Right, and so one of the things I would just suggest is as you talk with either neighbors or friends, or you see people move in, make sure they get to register their children as quickly as possible so that we can do that in a thoughtful way.
So
that truly is helpful when you can do that. And some people do that, and it truly is helpful when that happens.
Last minute registrations are problematic, is what
They
you're
are a
saying?
challenge, right?
Yeah.
And then you understand why. Sometimes people don't get that house until the end, and they are coming in late. But it does make it just a little bit,
And it does impact the first grade more than any of our other grades.
yes, most often, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Aislinn Baran, 1053 Seward Ave, here for the same issue. I just want to go on the record for it as well. The class size, I think last year went up by around 40 students, so I guess it was probably bigger than just all the last minute registrations. I echo everything that you said. I personally just went in 2 weeks ago and taught an art class in my daughter's first grade classroom. And yeah, I mean, with 3 adults there, we could barely control the children. I think my daughter has had some biological issues with, how often she gets to go to the bathroom and things like that. Kids that are that young, probably, just have needs that I think aren't being addressed very well with just the sheer size. I think the teachers are excellent. I don't think they're doing anything wrong. We know how experienced they are, but just want to belabor the point. That's the main reason I came here today. It was very interesting. Thank you for all your service, I have to say, the whole meeting. So I'm certainly not experienced in education. I'm a scientist. But the other point or question I had, I'm surprised to hear about these transportation costs and this issue that is obviously a state level issue. So I guess I have 2 questions about it. First is, can we do anything as citizens? Like, should we be contacting our senator about this law that obviously allows the transportation companies to come in and up their contract and forcibly up the spend that we have? That's one question. The second question is, is there any type of creative solution? Like, can we put this out there in the public domain and say we have this problem? Is there some way that people see of solving it? You know, just something, or is there any other type of creative solution? I know not within our district, it's not that you're not thinking about it, I'm not trying to question your job, I'm just wondering if there is something outside of the box that maybe, it sounded like one of your biggest budget issues. So that was just a question I thought of here. I don't think I have to say anything more about the Tamaqua, problem. I didn't really hear a solution. I hear that, we can maybe help with the registration, but it'd be great to hear if you're actually going to do something about it, because I think the class size is not going to change. It's not going to go down, right? And I don't know if the
I'm
needs
sorry,
of
do
the
you mean
children.
for next year?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I wasn't clear. No, I guess I didn't say that. If the numbers stay the same or go up, I've already spoken with the business administrator that we will need another section for second grade. So we will look, but I don't know where the numbers are going to go.
Okay. No, yeah, thank you. I didn't
Yeah,
hear.
I'm sorry if I didn't say that.
Okay. So, I can step away and listen to the answer, or whatever about the.
So,
the
sure, any
transportation.
lobbying that any parents do certainly is helpful. So sure, if you can lobby to, the requirements that have created the bus shortage are actually federal requirements, not state requirements. The purchasing side of it, which is the bidding side of it, that is a state requirement. So sure, lobbying any legislators would help, or may help. As far as the creative, I've tried to come up with every creative answer I could come up with. Problem is, we're very regulated by state laws on what kind of vehicles can transport students and that kind of thing. So it's hard to be creative when you've got many different laws governing us.
And
But
those state requirements get stricter every year.
Yeah.
There's inevitably there's an accident and they up the requirements, and it
Yes.
adds
Right.
another $100,000 to the price of a bus.
Right,
Right.
just a
State
couple,
parameters.
just a couple years ago, too, there was a requirement made, I think, that the people that operate the buses have to be able to look under the hood and identify, like, how all the parts of the engine work and how to fix things if needed. Not to actually do it, but to be
To be able
more
to check
aware of
the
it.
oil,
And so
yeah.
if you think
Yeah.
of the bus drivers we remember from when we were kids, I don't know that those bus drivers would have been able to do that, but that would further restrict who would even be eligible to drive a bus. So if you
Yeah.
have a shortage to begin
Right.
with, and you have a fairly robust economy with low unemployment, and then you put these kinds of
And
new
it's not
restrictions.
and it's not an
requirements-
easy job.
And
No,
those-
it's not.
Those requirements
That's
were
true.
always there. The state wasn't actively enforcing them during the commercial driver's license recertification process. The federal government told them they had to. So.
Yeah.
Dana, I'm sure your organization,
Business
the
administrators.
business administrators organization, everybody must be sort of talking
Yes.
about this, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
and
It's-
brainstorming and other superintendents, so.
Every state and county meeting I go to, transportation's brought up.
So we also work, my colleagues in Union County and I, looking at where we're sending students to out-of-district placements and see if we can share. I mean, that's what Union County Ed Services does and Marsh Union does as well. But we've taken it into our own hands to try and figure out, can we share routes? Can we do something to make this work better and be more efficient? And we've made some changes that have worked out that way, but it's
Has
an
there
uphill
been-
battle.
Has there been any talk with some of the private schools that we send the kids to about staggering their start times so that we can monopolize some of these routes a little bit better?
It's not start times, it's distance, it's the special needs of students, it's a lot of variables,
Right.
a lot of variables. And you can't, sometimes it's hard to put kids that are in two different towns because of, you don't wanna make the bus ride that long.
Yeah, you can't put a special needs kid on the bus for 2.5
Right,
hours.
so.
Yeah.
And I will attest, I think Dana and her staff are extremely creative. I mean, I've sat in many meetings with her and how she juggles things and so forth. And I will reiterate, I mean, if parents have concerns that they want our state senators and legislators to look at, it's always beneficial to reach out because they can only hear us so much. But when they hear from parents and taxpayers and so forth, it also hits homes that there are changes that may be needed within our Westfield community, which may be different than what's needed in Elizabeth or places like that. So I do encourage people to do that.
And it does take more weight when you say my kid's being impacted because of this, instead of us saying, well, we have to have a larger classroom in first grade.
Right.
If you get Senator Kane's ear and can tell him, you know, the difference you notice between your two kids, then that has a lot more weight than coming from us
Sure,
about
sure.
the impact in the classroom.
Right, right,
We can talk numbers, but we can't talk about experience.
yeah. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lisa Mola. I live at 108 Surrey Lane in Westfield, and I'm also here as a Tamaulipas mom with my concern about the class size in first grade. I just wanted to ask this question regarding the cap of first grade or second grade. The upcoming second grade being that this year there are 26, 25 children in the room. What would be the number for you to open up that fifth section for second grade? I understand if it stays the same or increases, but if the class size goes to 25, will it remain the same if it goes down to 24 in each class?
Okay, let me be clear. The class sizes are based on the students who are actually assigned to that class for academic areas. There is now one class of 25 in first grade in Tamaulipas. And then I think it's two 24s and a 23.
And is that including the children that
No, then we have children who are assigned to a different class, but they are part of the class for certain parts of the day, right? So we don't, and that's the case not just in Tamaulipas, but that's the case in any elementary school, how the class sizes are determined, okay? So, so that's the first part of it. Second, the easiest way to say it would be, I would look for next year to make sure that there is not a class of 25, right? If there's a class, even one class of 25 in that grade, then we should look to decrease it.
I also wanted to bring up that in some of the classes, we've heard that there's inadequate seating. There are some children who aren't sitting at a table, they're sitting on a bench because it's not enough space, physical space.
Well, that's important, no doubt, so let me, I'll follow up on that.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Seeing nobody else come forth to the podium, we will move into private session. I'd like the board to approve the following resolution. Resolve that the Board of Education move into private session for the purpose of discussing matters rendered confidential by state and federal law, negotiations, legal matters, and harassment, intimidation, and bullying incidents. Be it further resolved that any discussion held by the board which need not remain confidential, and the results of the discussion will be made public as soon as practicable. Do I have a second?
Second.
Kent?
Michael.
Oh, Mike.
Oh, I got one. Takes about 3 months.
Okay. Do we have to vote? All in
We're
favor?
all in favor, I said.
Aye. Yeah. Okay.
You got
Okay,
6
I
seconds.
forgot.
So
It's all good.
That's a